Portland, Texas isn't just another city by the bay. Standing 14 feet above sea level, the city has so much to offer. From birding to fishing, from shopping to golfing, or if you're in the market for a great meal, Portland is just over the Harbor Bridge from Corpus Christi. This growing city is a hidden gem, and we're ready to uncover all it has to offer.
Celebrating everything the Coastal Bend has to offer.
This is a great place to live, so let's talk about it.
Get the scoop on the latest trends, popular fashions, hottest music, exciting events, and so much more.
Come on, let's have some fun.
This is Coastal Living on KZTV. Now your host, Clarissa Serna.
Here in South Texas, we're surrounded by water, particularly here in Portland. So why not try out some new water sports? Jocelyn went out and did some research on some that we might want to try, right, Jocelyn?
That's right, Clarissa. Some that I've never even heard of, and I think it's just for about everybody.
Okay, well, let's take a look.
Well, if it's one thing you're going to want to do here in Portland, Texas, it's kiteboarding. Joining me is Jeff Howard, owner of kiteboarding.com. Thank you for having me here today,
You
Jeff.
bet. Thanks for coming in.
So earlier I asked you, why do you think kiteboarding is so popular here in Portland? Let's go ahead and let our friends know.
Kiteboarding and wind sports here because we have our thermal winds. This is one of the windiest spots on average in the whole U.S. and it blows almost all the time. We can ride, a little over 300 days a year, and it's fantastic. That average strong wind speed makes it perfect for kiteboarding, windsurfing, wingboarding, all the type of wind sports, and the unlimited water access. We have a ton of beachside, and we have it in the bay as well.
All right, well that sounds great. I've actually never heard of the other sport. That's something I don't think anyone has heard of here in the Coastal Bend unless you're a pro, so let's talk about that.
Which one? The wingboarding?
Wingboarding, yes.
Wingboarding is something that's coming in the last 2 years. It's getting really popular, based because on foils. We have foils that run under the water. You hold an inflatable wing, which is really light, and you're using the power of the wind as you hold the sail. The advantages are is you can get out there and surf the bay swell and everything else. I mean, we ride all the way across the bay and back. It's just an easier way to get into wing sports as well. It's one of the easier sides to learn. Kiteboarding is a little bit more difficult,
I see.
And wingboarding makes it easy.
I would expect otherwise. Now, do you think that this is a sport, both of them, that you can do any season other than the spring and summertime?
Yes, we do it year round here. As we all know, it doesn't get too cold down here.
Lucky for
so
us.
wetsuits and gear like that, the technology in that allows us to get in the water pretty much any day of the year here. If the wind is blowing and it stays blowing, we're out there riding.
All right. Well, whether it's kiteboarding or wingboarding, how can we prepare and gear up, as, of course, safely?
The best side of getting into the sport is by taking classes and getting someone to teach you all the basics, getting in at the right levels so you know what you're doing, you learn how to deal with the water, you know what the safety gear, you know what wings to pick, what boards to ride and stuff like that. But taking a lesson is always the best bet to getting involved in it.
Okay.
Come in, talk to us, we'll definitely help you out. We've been here a long time and we love getting people involved in the sport.
All right. Well, we definitely want to get you all involved, but before we do, what is some gear that we need to have as we're out there on the water?
When you're out in the water, first off, you want to make sure you know how to swim. Make sure you're good at swimming. Then you've got life jackets, helmets, booties, which protect your feet by walking in and out of the shore and stuff like that. And you want to, again, get the training right and keeping the right distance. So if you do have any problems, you know how to swim in and you can swim that distance in and deal with it.
All right, Jeff. Well, thank you again. And where can people go for more information to learn about your equipment or if they want to take a class?
If you're looking at taking a class and getting signed up and see what we do, go to kiteboarding.com and you can see everything there. We do a lot of other things in the sport. We maintain the gear and equipment and everything else, but they can always see everything at kiteboarding.com.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeff. And everyone be sure to do some water sports here in Portland, Texas. Well, we all know that this is the birdiest city in the United States as birds migrate over our Coastal Bend waters. Clarissa actually spoke with an expert that can give you tips if you're a beginner or a pro.
We're here at Sunset Lake with local birder Ben, here to tell us about his experience as a birder and why Portland is such a great area to check out the variety of birds in South Texas. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Tell me about your experience. How long have you been birding?
I've been birding, I moved down to Texas about 15 years ago, but I've only been birding for about 10, and you can't have a better place than the Coastal Bend, and this is kind of right smack dab in the middle of the Coastal Bend, so it's really a great spot to come and see a great variety of species.
Very cool. What got you into birding in the first place? We know it's the birdiest city.
Yeah, a lot of people got me into it, going to bird walks with bird hosts at different parks, and I, in my job, I get to go to a lot of state parks throughout the region, so they just kind of got me hooked on it, and I've been following birding quite a bit. It's kind of like stamp collecting, where you just are looking for that next bird, the next rare bird. So.
Very cool. Well, as much as we've talked about birding on Coastal Living, this is my first time getting the hands-on experience, or should I say the eyes-on experience.
Right.
And it really is fascinating to watch these birds in action, and as you're sharing the information about them, learning their migration patterns and things like that. So what are some of the things we look for when we're out here birding, as far as the variety of birds and some of the patterns they have?
Yeah, so, and this is a good example of what I was talking about earlier, of us having this variety of habitats. So we have different birds using different places. We have the surf that's out there in the bay, so it's deeper water, and we'll have some ducks that just use that, and then we've got some shallower water back here in these little pools that some other birds, the smaller birds, will use that. We've got these sand flats that are out here that are a great spot for them to loaf around and rest. And then we've got this bigger lake here that is a great spot for them, the bigger birds, the wading birds, to go out there and fish, and then brown pelicans as well. And then over on the other side of the highway there's all these little constructed islands that are where these birds will even nest. So really just the variety of habitats here, and not just at this park, but if you go into Portland, the wooded areas will have a bunch of the little tiny colorful warbler species and stuff like that that'll come in. So it's really a great place to kind of see that variety. And with the variety of habitats comes the variety of birds.
Absolutely, and I'm learning a lot about them today. Like I said, my first time with this experience, and now I can see and understand why it's kind of therapeutic and something you might get addicted to. It's very peaceful. It's kind of like earthing or grounding yourself, kind of watching the behaviors of these birds. So say I want to come out on my own and do this myself. As a beginner, what are some things I might want to bring with me? Yeah,
I mean, the first thing we say is, you really don't need anything to go birding, right? To go bird watching. We're right here. We can see shapes and stuff like that of those birds. There are birds flying over us. We can get pretty close to some of them. I can tell you, if we went much closer to these birds, they would all lift off and take off. So, a set of binoculars, and they don't need to be great, but I always say, like, if you're going to invest in something for birding, get good binoculars.
Okay.
You don't need to get the big scope like I have. That's a long way in the future. But the other thing that I always recommend is camera. If you can take pictures of these birds and then go home and study them, it makes it so much easier. So we could get a picture of those birds and not exactly know what it is. There's plenty of Facebook pages and things like that that can help you identify what the bird is.
Yeah, well, I like that you mentioned the Facebook pages too, because when it comes to community, I'm sure there are different organization and kind of clubs here in the Portland area, around South Texas to join. Any worth mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, there's Coastal Bend Birding is one of the Facebook pages, and they're really for birders to help other birders find birds, but also help identify maybe a weird bird that's in your area. But there's also, there's bird walks that you can go on in Corpus or in Rockport. There's even some here every once in a while where you can go and learn from birders and actually take classes and stuff like that. So that's really how I did it. Initially, I just started taking pictures of all the birds and then went home and okay, that's why this one is different from this one, and that's why it's a different species and all of that stuff. But over time, you kind of build that knowledge, and then you're going all over the country, which I have, looking for certain birds, specific birds. So.
Very cool. It's really neat to find that purpose in life and find peace through that. I think everyone's looking for something. For some, it's reading a book. For some, it's exercise. For some, it's birding. So we want to invite you out to Portland. Sunset Lake is a great area. Anywhere else in Portland that's worth mentioning? There's
a couple of places, just even a city park, or I like to bird cemeteries. I know it's kind of, it seems weird, but I always think of it as kind of, that's a peaceful place. Sure. It's a peaceful place for you. The birds, there's a lot of trees there a lot of times, so the birds are in. It's a beautiful environment there. So we'll get a lot of birds that go in there, but along the beach, anywhere along the coastline, it's going to be good birding.
Very cool. Well, thanks for the insight.
Absolutely.
I'm personally ready to become a birder. Finally, it happened. But thank you so much for teaching us a thing or two. Sunset Lake right here in Portland. Come visit and come become a birder, just like us.
Portland is a hidden gem for fisheries in the coastal bend. The surrounding areas near this city prove to be excellent fishing for many anglers. This is where you can find redfish and speckled trout as they swim along the shoreline. Throughout the year, Portland's strong winds are known to drive nutrients onto the shoreline, attracting saltwater fish. The hardshell bottom and structure make a productive wade fishing site for anglers and even visitors throughout the year. You can spot redfish running the banks throughout the summer and early fall season. As you go into Portland, you will see Sunset Lake from the causeway. The name not only speaks for itself, but it is also an epic area to cast a line, with either option to wade fish in the lake or the bay. You are guaranteed to catch fish in this serene area, as well as many surrounding locations of Portland, Texas. Well, there's a beautiful new space here in Portland, Texas for sporting events.
That's right, but this sports complex isn't just for sports. It has areas available for public use like a splash pad and a track. You can even rent out the space for your own personal event. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Bessinet. I'm the sports director for the city of Portland, and we're here at the Portland Sports Complex. It's 100% turf. We have 4 softball fields, we have a football field, and we have 5 baseball fields as well. The sports complex opened in October of 2017, and it was one of the best facilities at that time in this area, south of San Antonio. Because we're open to the public, we have batting cages that are able to be utilized by the public, as well as a shared space of the multi-purpose field that's turf as well. It allows the community to come out and enjoy the resources that we've put in place here in Portland. For a lot of the residents, it's the ability to participate in tournaments that are high level, high skill, without having to travel so far. We are also becoming a sports destination for a lot of the areas south of San Antonio, and we're bringing in a lot of big teams that they're not having to travel for, so that's a savings on their side. I think families can come out here and enjoy this complex because it has something for everyone. It has a splash pad for the little kids, it has the great playing surface for the older kids, and it also allows parents to be able to know that they can watch and play sports with their kids here at the Sports Complex. If you'd like to visit the Sports Complex, you can definitely take advantage of our splash pads, our playgrounds, our walking path, and our batting cages. If you'd like to rent one of the fields, you can definitely contact us at www.playportlandtexas.com.
So of course, Portland is a gorgeous area to visit, to enjoy water sports and things like that. But how about the gorgeous and unique environment that Portland shares with us? Today I have Randy Bissell here. He is a master naturalist and geologist to talk about this gorgeous landscape that we're looking at here. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. I've been a geologist in Corpus Christi for about 30 years.
All right, well
and
qualified.
So in the last few years, my wife Dawn and I have become Texas Master Naturalists, and if you don't know what that program is, we're simply ambassadors really for nature. We work with the Texas Parks and Wildlife and with Texas AgriLife to introduce people to nature at a variety of different sites. And we have a couple of chapters here in South Texas, and we have some of the best places to visit, I think, in Texas, right here on our coast. And one of those unique places is on the edge of Nueces Bay. A lot of people come over the bridge or across the causeway. They look at one side of the bay, Nueces Bay or Corpus Christi Bay, and they just see the causeway and the shoreline, and they really never think about the way it got to look like this. And it's a very fascinating and a very recent story about what do we see when we look at these cliffs here in Portland or the Bay Cliff in Corpus Christi. How do we unravel the geological history, the short, relatively recent geological history that makes up this really cool landscape that we have? And I like to tell people there are 5 basic big things that we can see or identify in the different places that we have around South Texas. Number 1 was the 400,000 years of developing the coastal sediments, and then 125,000 years ago, we had that last sea level rise that was about 15 to 20 feet higher than today. And then the third event was that it's really the Wisconsin Ice Age, when we had a huge ice sheet on the North Pole. And then and then sea level fell so far because all that seawater got caught up in the ice. And then that ice cap has melted and sea level has risen to what we call the Holocene, which are these sediments there today. Well, there's a fifth thing. So what do you think the fifth thing is?
Humans.
People.
People.
Right? Because we move stuff around so dramatically. And so when I look at the landscape like this, I see all five things. I see the past, the big Wisconsin Ice Age fall, the sea level rise, and the development of the Holocene sediment. And then the last thing is us. And I see us. And we put our thumbprint kind of on everything. When we came out here scouting locations, I was amazed at some of the opportunities to see at sites like this, the wildlife, the plants, the butterflies, everything. This is a really special place we are.
It really is, and I love that you're encouraging us to take a look around and take note of what we see, and then to kind of dive in even farther and think about the history that each level kind of carries and where it's brought us.
Well, absolutely, because here's the deal with our children. We have to help our children appreciate the beauty of the natural settings that we have, because that appreciation will lead to an idea of preservation and conservation and even ultimately restoration of these precious places like this location, our Nueces Delta Preserve, Mustang Island State Park, Padre Island National Seashore, Oso Bay Wetlands Preserve. There are incredible nature sites that are worth preserving for our children and their children, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Absolutely. So we've got to do our part to preserve, and that's why it's important to educate ourselves. And is there a way to get in touch with someone like yourself if somebody wants like a guided tour or more information, more detail on something like this?
We're always recruiting future Texas master naturalists. And so we have a website. It's www.txmntexasmasternaturalist.org. And if you go onto that site, you can look at South Texas, and you can look at opportunities to either join our chapter, which is in Corpus Christi, or the Mid-Coast chapter, which is located on this side of Nueces Bay.
Well, thank you for your time today. You are such a professional, and I appreciate you giving us insight, not only as adults on what we can appreciate, but how to share that and pass it down to our children as well. It is so important to pass it to future generations. Some of these big things happened just 100, 200 years ago, so let's do our part to take care of our land and continue to appreciate all the beauty that it entails. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Now don't go anywhere, we're just getting started out here in Portland.
That's right, we're gonna burn some calories with some water sports and so much more.
Yep, after that we'll grab a bite to eat and maybe play a few rounds of golf.
That's right, and you can't forget about the shopping.
Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.